Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Merry belated Christmas.
Right. Yeah. Christmas does not, there are a billion reasons why Christmas didn't feel like Christmas this year, but this is the first year Mark and I both had kids. Mark, all of the focus is just on the kids now.
Absolutely. It was kind of ridiculous because he had Nolan had waves of presents that lasted the whole freaking day. He had probably 20 presents, but Kelly's family also, which is different than my family, we do the order thing where it's like you open a present, you open a present. But when they open a present, they want to put it together and get it working and stuff. I'm like, no, open the present. We'll do that after everything's open. But he went on the whole day opening presents. So it was a full day thing.
It is kind of crazy that everybody has their own, there's no set way to do Christmas as far as exchanging gifts. That's kind of funny. Joe, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure that you have many, many things to say about Wonder Woman. This is our old friend Joe from Guy at the Movies. Joe, how was your Christmas?
It was good. It was low key this year, but it came and went, which was kind of nice. It was just another day, really.
I did enjoy not having to drive all over the state of Illinois to go see people. We never left the house, and that was probably the best part because it was probably 5 degrees here. But yeah, it was definitely the weirdest Christmas, and hopefully the weirdest Christmas I will ever have.
Right.
It was nice though because you didn't feel rushed too. It was nice having this first Christmas as a dad, to just slow down and take time and not worry about we have to leave in 30 minutes to get to this aunt's house or whatever. So that was a nice part about it.
I don't have kids, but it was really cool with the young nieces in my family, seeing them run around. I mean, they're each right under 2, and just seeing them able to actually play with the toys this year. And, the same thing, they were pulling them out and wanted them built right away because they wanted to tackle them and go crazy. But that was a neat difference this year.
Mm-hmm.
I have to disagree with not being on the schedule though, because our entire day revolved around when we could have a video call with whom.
Oh God.
Family and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, the kid's got a nap now. And so that was still a little bit of pressure, but what am I complaining about? There's a million ways it could have been worse. So
we just did a giant Zoom call the week before for our family Christmas party. And that allowed us not to have to do individual calls on Christmas Day or feel the need to.
Doesn't it have to be worse though? I mean, you're dealing with presumably older relatives.
Yeah, that take forever to get into the call.
And everybody's talking over each other. That happens to everyone, not just old people. We talk over each other all the time. Did you get a headache from it?
Well, I was just messing with my older aunts, putting green screen backgrounds where it looks like I'm in Mexico, on the beach. They're like, Mark, where are you right now? I'm still wearing a knit cap, but they think I'm in Mexico. I'm just don't worry about it. Just enjoying life on vacation.
Messing around with them.
Nice to see that you're a dick to everyone, regardless of whether you do a podcast with them.
Doesn't matter who you are.
Equal opportunity.
Joe, I want to give you a chance to plug your channels and anything you've been working on lately.
Yeah, thanks. Guy at the Movies on Instagram and guyatthemovies.com, mainly just movie reviews and wonderful movie news when we actually get it. Sometimes we're hitting some stretches of nothing here.
Mm-hmm.
But also the Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean every Wednesday. And I'm launching a new solo podcast next Friday, which is called Never Coming Soon. And each episode's about a movie that was in development, but never quite made it. So the first one is about Superman Lives, Nicolas Cage Superman.
Nice. That's a
photo. The infamous, that was Kevin Smith, wasn't it? Originally
until they destroyed his script.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yep.
Very interesting. Can't wait for that. And also, you've written a ton of reviews, one of which was for Wonder Woman, which we'll get into your points on that later in the show. But absolutely check him out. And we've been working on a bi-weekly trivia segment on YouTube. So make sure you're tuning in for that. Obviously, we'll plug it on all of our channels, and you can possibly win some cool stuff.
Yes, sir.
Let's move on.
News to us.
Now, this week historically is awful for news, for movie news, pop culture news. Obviously, everybody's just kind of not just really in Hollywood, but everyone's just coasting to the end of the year. And I really appreciate that because the beginning of the year always fucking sucks for me. But we had to find some stranger trailers. And one of them was for a movie called Lapsis. And Joe, you sounded like you were familiar with this, and there was a reason why. It sounded like it was at your local film festival.
It was, yeah. It was on my list to watch, and I never quite got around to it, but it's definitely an intriguing premise.
So basically, it's the not so distant future, and everyone's job has come down to laying fiber optic cable for some conglomerate, and the jobs are being automated, as all jobs are.
AT&T.
This is basically just like Comcast, Universal, AT&T parody, and it's got, what caught my eye is the weird leaf things around, like all of the accolades that it got. We talk about that all the time. That's how you know it's a good movie. That's what our next logo is going to be, is just the leaves around the Chumpcast. But it's, all of the comments, the stinger lines from reviewers were like a scathing satire of our society today. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but Mark, what did you think?
It's definitely different. We haven't seen anything like this before. At least I haven't seen anything like this. I didn't know. It sounded like it was going to take like a horror turn towards the middle of the trailer. Like the scores, the music started building up, getting more suspenseful, and then I don't know. It just felt like it was just going to continue being satire and a comedy or whatever. I probably won't see it unless we have to see it the week it comes out, but we'll see.
I was at least intrigued by it. No big name actors or anything, but this could be one of those low budget movies that turns into kind of a cult hit, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like one of those. It's going to be like a slow burn of a movie, though, and like nothing wild. Especially if it's low budget like that, then they're probably just playing more on emotion. But could be interesting.
Mark might be onto something. This may be just a slow dive into psychosis from our main character, who is just attempting to stay slightly in front of a robot, and the robot is just constantly on his tail. It's kind of like It Follows, but with a robot who's trying to steal your job instead of break all of your bones.
Did you guys like that movie? Sorry, I feel like we got to talk about that movie for 1 second.
You're the only person I've ever spoken to who doesn't like that movie.
I don't know. It just never really got that close. It was always just like kind of there.
Follow from a distance.
It's all about the existential dread, though. It's kind of like real life, where you think that something is coming to get you, but something actually is coming to get you. Like, even if you flew across and went to live in Japan, you still know that thing is coming to kill you.
I would have just been like, oh, hell no.
Go to someone else.
I would have just grabbed a baseball bat and be like, I'm done with this shit. Started fucking coming at the follow thing and just fucking wailing away.
Joe, did you like that movie?
I was indifferent. Like, it's definitely not one I'll watch again, but it was fine.
I think similar to Lapsis, there is something to be said for movies that are a very original idea that we haven't seen before. And I will always give them a little more credence than, a Wonder Woman sequel or whatever. So, just my opinion. Next trailer, though. Mark, this is for you. We've got a new Ghibli movie, Earwig and the Witch. This one looks a little different. This is done by Miyazaki's son. Is that right, Mark?
Yep, Gore. I don't know how to pronounce it, but yeah.
Goro. Sure, he's got 4 arms. What did you think about the trailer?
I thought it was okay. The first thing to note is obviously this is a different style of animation that we've seen from previous Ghibli movies. I'm not saying they're all necessarily like the exact same style, because they are usually 2D, but sometimes they are drawn a little bit differently than the typical like Spirited Away or, Castle in the Sky or whatever you want to compare it to. This is all Pixar type animation. I think this is the first time we've gotten anything like this from a Ghibli movie.
It is his first 3D movie. I do I will quarrel a little bit with the Pixar reference because the animation is not that slick.
No.
Usually with Ghibli movies, especially older Ghibli movies, it was kind of the original Disney animation where it was extremely intricate and almost to the point where it's too much, like too beautiful, because you can just imagine those animators going absolutely nuts and the hand cramps that they definitely got.
Yeah.
But Joe, what did you think?
It looks fine. I've never seen a Studio Ghibli film, to be honest, which,
Okay.
you know,
That sound is Mark kicking you out of the podcast right now.
Yeah, that's the quietest I've ever heard Mark. He just looked straight.
Well, now's your chance. I'm not gonna ding you for it because they were actually kind of hard to watch at first because you'd have to buy the actual movie, and people were not ready to pay $25 because they never went on sale. Now they're on HBO Max, so you do have accessibility to them.
Yeah, I definitely need to check them out. But honestly, animation's never really my first go-to. It's kind of like when I have nothing else going on. But I do want to check them out because I've heard great things. I know you're a fan of them, so we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
My favorite, by the way, is My Neighbor Totoro. But Mark, aren't you a Howl's Moving Castle guy?
I do like Howl's Moving Castle. I'm actually watching that right now. I mean, Spirited Away is my number one. I do like Princess Mononoke. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah. I enjoy pretty much all those movies. And Goro, just for the listeners, he actually hasn't done too many. A lot of them were like some of the smaller Ghibli movies that you might not be familiar with. He did do From Up on Poppy Hill. That was probably the largest title that he's done for the Ghibli franchise. And it's actually kind of interesting how he came into, you would think like, oh, he's the son of Miyazaki. So obviously he just wanted to be like his dad, but that wasn't the case. He actually did not want to get into the movie business at all or animation. And he, it sounded like, well, he did work on the big theme park that went up in Tokyo, I think. And he was mainly just the creative director from that standpoint, like making sure he had the vision of what the theme park would look like. So that was his main job. He had nothing to do with any of the movies at first. And then he kind of got brought into the mix. So he didn't have a lot of experience until he started working on movies like From Up on Poppy Hill and things like that. So you won't see him on a lot of the older Ghibli movies. So it is interesting now, obviously, Miyazaki, the founder, has passed away. So you would think his son's going to take the brunt of the majority of all the movies that are going to be coming in the next couple of years. So we'll see how these turn out. But this one is definitely different just because of the animation style. It's more of that Pixar feel.
It's interesting, though, because it looks like this is his first solo outing. All the other films that he had done looked like he had other... maybe I'm reading that wrong. Never mind, I lied.
I was not expecting a masterclass. I should have when talking about Ghibli movies, but I appreciate the background.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into our actual news for the week. I found this interesting for a couple reasons. One, because this is Millie Bobby Brown is signing on to star in an adaptation of The Electric State. So this was originally a graphic novel by Simon Stalenhag, and I'm sure I'm butchering that, but this is basically an alternate universe where robots and humans live together. But Millie Bobby Brown teams up with this robot to go find out what happens in the tragic death of her brother. This is written by the Russo Brothers, who everybody knows. You know, they've done the most recent Avengers movies and tons more. But what was interesting to me about this is that the Russo Brothers were contractually obligating the studio to push this to a theatrical release. So that's interesting to me because we're looking at a potentially dying industry. This movie hasn't even started production yet, and theaters could be gone by the time it actually, exists out in the wild. At least the major chains, AMC and things like that. So I don't know, Joe, how involved do you get, or how close do you follow the actual economics of the theatrical industry?
Yeah, I've been getting deeper into it more and more. That's a really interesting play that the Russo brothers are making, and I think you're going to start seeing that a lot more, especially with HBO Max and what they did. But it's kind of wild what's going on. I think you're going to see a lot of A lot more of this, but also a lot of the windows between, the theatrical release and streaming or DVD, Blu-ray, whatever, they're going to shrink. They used to be like months long, but now theaters need to play ball a little bit more. And I think they're more willing to renegotiate than to just, flip over and die.
Joe, do you think?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I do see this as kind of what was a monopoly, really. The only place that you could go see it was at a theater. Obviously, you had your choice of provider of the theaters, assuming you lived in a big enough city where there would be more than one. But really, the barrier to entry here, for lack of a better term, was going out, paying $15 for a ticket, and being gouged on popcorn. So maybe that's not going to be the case anymore.
The other push, though, it's going to depend what the Academy does with their rules moving forward with theatrical releases being required. That's why we got The Irishman and Marriage Story in theaters, like very limited last year, so that they could make a run for the awards. This year, they've suspended that, obviously. But I don't know. That's another dynamic if they're going to want to change their antiquated rules or not, and actually play ball with modern film viewing.
They should change the rules because their rules are dumb, but also there are a lot of movies that don't even consider that type of thing. Like this, The Electric State, doesn't really sound like something that's going to be going for a Best Picture Oscar. So I don't know, maybe the antiquated thing here is the Academy, and maybe we just stop caring about the Oscars. So it'll be interesting to see. I had this for later on in the episode too, but I guess it's relevant. Patty Jenkins was asked about potentially directing a third Wonder Woman, and the direct quote was, "I know that I'd love to do a third one if the circumstances were right and there was still a theatrical model possible. I don't know that I would do it if there wasn't." So it seems as though the directors and producers are the ones who are heavily hanging on to the theatrical model. I don't really know what the general consumer thought process is on this, but I'm fine staying at home.
I think it's going to go back. Honestly, I think you're going to start seeing more blockbusters returning to theaters once things get back to, somewhat normal come March, April, May. Because something like Wonder Woman 84 or Godzilla versus Kong, like that stuff is just not as great on a smaller screen. So even though we all have probably like huge TVs and stuff now, it's just not the same. The soundtracks are different. The movie scores don't hit the same. Seeing a Nolan film on TV, even though you have no freaking idea what's going on half the time, the soundtrack and the score is what you want to hear in theaters to drive a lot of the mood of the movie. I also think I argue this all the time, but horror movies need to be seen in theaters for full effect, in my opinion, because otherwise, if you're just sitting there watching them at home, you're not immersing yourself in them. So I think there's a lot of value that theaters can still put forward, but it's going to be, I think you're going to see ticket prices go down. They have to, but in order for them to be able to do that, they're going to have to negotiate with the studios. Warner Brothers just lost all of its leverage when it comes to negotiating by announcing a full year slate going straight to HBO Max. So I think, probably Disney will be the one that is charting a new path forward with them based on the amount of films that they pump into theaters each year.
And thinking about like Mulan, how do you think Disney is going to do it? Because now they have an example like Warner Brothers, who I think they jumped the gun a little bit. You didn't have to release all of those movies at once and say they're coming to HBO Max the day that they're hitting theaters.
They can go back on that at any time, though. I understand an argument that a lot of people have made. At any point in time, they didn't sign a contract that said, no, we're definitely going to do this. At any point, they can just say, sorry, things are better now. We can change our minds.
But it's already hard enough for them to get subscribers. You think that's really going to help them get more business, is being like, oh yeah, we told you guys you're going to get 10 movies. Now you're only going to get 4.
It's very shitty business. I mean, you're exactly right. Like they can go back on that at any time. It's just not going to look good for them.
Well,
you think
it wouldn't look good to the consumers, the ones who are subscribing, but it would look good to the studios, producers, directors, etc., who hate this, namely Christopher Nolan, who is clearly a dickhead.
Well, but I think also too the damage has been done there. Like you see all the shit that you're reading about. What's his name doing Dune, Patty Jenkins obviously upset. James Gunn is apparently pissed off. Like, some prominent directors. Prominent is maybe the wrong word, but directors that we're seeing a lot right now.
Yeah,
because aren't the numbers going to be higher at a theater regardless of? Well, at a theater, wouldn't you think the numbers, even if it flopped, would be a lot higher than what they would get for streaming? Because I think, wasn't that what Nolan was pissed off about? He's like, yeah, I get it. Tenet didn't do nearly as much as I did for my other movies. But if it went right to streaming, I would have lost out on a lot more because, a lot of it goes to HBO Max or whatever, and it's just not going to make as much money.
Without getting too deep into that, it's probably going to hit him in the pocketbooks, and that's why these directors are so pissed. Because what they get is generally a piece of the back end in theaters, and it's potentially we're just going to have to change the way that we do business on this. And pardon me for not feeling bad for Patty Jenkins. She made $9 million to write and direct Wonder Woman. So if she only gets $5 million or $3 million, I don't really feel bad about that. Just personal. Yeah. Especially Chris Nolan can fuck off. I'm so sick of hearing that motherfucker talk.
The only thing though, Christopher Nolan, the part that gets me is again back to the bad business of it. I don't know how they're getting around whatever contracts they had with these directors who already have their films in the can that are just sitting, right? So thinking about Dune, which is pretty much done. I'm sure there's some work on the back end, but even when signing those directors, you sign them to deals that probably give them a cut of theatrical proceeds. And I just don't know how Warner Brothers is doing that. In the future, they can work around it, obviously, but unless you're renegotiating with everyone, which I really doubt you're doing right now, you're definitely hitting them in the pocketbooks, and that's their livelihood.
Do you think Disney is going to start saying, okay, they're obviously going to theaters on this date, but you can either buy it right now or you can wait 2 weeks and get it for free on the streaming service? Do you think they'll do it like that? Because they kind of did that with Mulan, but they didn't. They didn't tell us when it was going to become free on the app.
I think, but still, I think that had sentiment of Mulan been better, if people were more excited to see it, if there was more of a fervor, then maybe they would have waited longer to release it on Disney Plus. It's a combination of the virus and people just not caring about Mulan.
I don't know what they're going to do. Burning Soul the way they just did by dumping it on Disney Plus without an upcharge was an interesting decision. I think ultimately they're just trying to get more subscribers, and not that they really need them at this point because they're capitalizing on all of their goals, but I don't know what they're going to do. I think they're taking the right approach with, it seems like they're doing movie by movie in terms of the decisions they're making with the pandemic. Like Raya and the Last Dragon is their next animated coming out in March. And that one's going to be day and date, but it's Disney Plus or Disney Plus Premier Access, which is the upcharge.
The Mulan,
the Mulan model. So whether that continues, now you're seeing they're making specific movies for Disney Plus, right? So the Cheaper by the Dozen remake or Swiss Family Robinson, all that stuff that they could have sent to theaters and made a little bit on, they're just banking it all into Disney Plus, which might be the smart move.
Yeah, we'll see. Warner Brothers really did force Disney's hand with Soul, I think.
Oh yeah. They
needed something because HBO Max is really making a push to be the premier streaming service right now with all this kind of stuff. And I had in my notes, Batman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond are coming to HBO Max January 1st. That's huge for a certain demographic of people like Mark and myself. Joe, I don't know about you, but
I'm in.
Yeah. We got people in the chat asking about the
Snyder Cut. April 2021, supposedly.
I just want that shit show to be over. I'm so tired of hearing about it. I don't care if it's good or bad. It can't possibly be that much better than the original Justice League was. But
it's Mark, 2.5 hours longer.
Okay, we're gonna have to do 2 weeks. We're gonna have to break that into parts.
They are. It's gonna be 4 parts. But the part that's that's what kind of pisses me off. Actually, no. When you're talking about the Snyder Cut and people are saying, "Oh, how's it going to be different?" It's completely different. It's 4.5 hours, but done by a different director. And they're saying they're gonna try to eliminate the Whedon version, but I think he's doing a good job of doing that himself with like his entire career right now. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a totally different movie. Whether it's good or not, who knows? But
it's the $1 million question, isn't it? Possibly $1 billion question. All right. I love talking the business side of things. I don't know if everybody else does or anybody likes to hear it, but let's move on. Kevin Feige's been doing some interviews talking about the upcoming shows. Obviously, Disney had their big showcase not that long ago, but he's been talking about She-Hulk and how the series release at Disney Plus will be a half hour, so different than WandaVision and all the other stuff. It's going to be a procedural legal comedy, which is something I don't know that we've seen before. Definitely something that Marvel hasn't done, but I'm a big fan of the Jennifer Walters character. Joe as the legal guy. Is this something that intrigues you, or are you just like, okay, I get enough of this outside of entertainment?
No, I'm into it. I was nervous that Marvel was going to try to do like serious procedural, like a la like The Good Wife or, one of the million shows that are on that try to cover that. And really just try to be too serious. I like this half-hour model of kind of doing something silly. They mentioned offhandedly during the Disney Investor Day that there'll be other Marvel characters like thrown into the mix, and she'll be representing them and stuff. So that's going to make for some fun. But I don't think they're going to beat it to death, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Will she turn into She-Hulk in the courtroom?
I hope so.
She often practiced law as She-Hulk. Like everybody knows who she is. I'm hoping this hugs really closely to the Charles Soule She-Hulk comic book run, because I think that was brilliant. I guess it just remains to be seen. But it's there. At one point in Daredevil and She-Hulk, they just kind of made a mockery of the court, and it was basically this big sweeping motion. They were trying to set precedent to say that superheroes could take the stand without revealing their identities, so they could just go up and represent, or not represent themselves, but testify as a secret identity. So they could easily throw that in here, and that'll probably be where the outsiders come in. So sounds exciting. But the last bit of news I have is that Cobra Kai. So this is a blind spot for the podcast. Joe, is this something you've seen?
It's not, but my brother is obsessed with it and tells me like weekly that I need to start watching it, and I just haven't gotten there.
I get the same thing from certain groups of people. I don't know. This doesn't. I only recognize Jaden Smith as the Karate Kid. I don't really care about this. I'm sure I'll get to it eventually. People keep telling me how good it is, but I feel as though it's going to be one of those things that everybody builds it up so high that you finally go to watch it and you're just like, it's fine.
Yeah.
The news story here is they're pushing up the release date from January 8th to Jan 1. Sure. Cool. We got nothing else to do. We might as well watch it.
But I think we're just like, look at us.
They just have so much content. They're like, whatever. Yeah. Let's make news.
Yeah, right.
So I was talking to my wife about this earlier this week, because we're kind of trying to cut back on spending. Just, we got a kid and all this stuff. Like, if you had to eliminate one of these streaming services, which one would it be? Because I think mine might be Netflix.
I would say Netflix, because I have Hulu Live TV, and that just has everything I need to watch. And Netflix just hasn't really been doing it for me with like all their new movies they're putting out. They're all kind of the same shit. They're just like, I don't know. They're nothing that you need to watch right away.
I'm wondering if eventually we'll get to a point with Netflix's releases where they'll just be like, you can pay $5 and watch this one movie.
It's kind of going back to their former model, just without discs and stuff, right?
Yeah. Should they go back to that?
I don't know. I mean, maybe they keep raising their prices, and if you want to have multiple devices and 4K and all that stuff, I mean, Disney Plus is what, $7 a month compared to, I think I'm paying like $20 a month for Netflix now. Price is certainly going to come in to is going to be a factor there. But
I think
Hulu went up $10 too. Hulu Live TV went up $10.
See, I would get rid of Hulu because I don't have the live TV, and I don't watch anything on Hulu really, other than like certain releases. Palm Springs obviously was a good one, and some other minor things that I'm interested in, but in between them, I don't really watch anything.
Yeah, their self-produced movies, generally speaking, aren't great. They do acquire the rights to some stuff, but Nah.
Run was good. Run was pretty good.
Oh, that's yeah, that was okay. All right. Let's move on.
Best. We the best. Worst. The worst.
She's the worst person in the world. Huge skank, terrible. But thank you.
Elise is in the chat agreeing with us and saying that Netflix is almost never her first go-to anymore, and that's kind of how I feel. Unless I know something I really want to see is coming out, I don't just scroll through Netflix anymore.
Yeah.
And Peacock is taking The Office, and Seinfeld's going to leave Hulu eventually. All of these networks are going to take back their own content. So
maybe Peacock will be the one of the future.
Could be. I would probably just stick with the ads version, as to not have to pay for it. So everything's just times a flat circle. We're going back to what we had before, where it was just you're watching commercials and everything sucks. Mark, you heard the drop. Who's your best man alive this week?
I got to give it to taxi driver Nicholas Walteros. He's from Colombia, and him and his beloved dog Colonel take passengers and ride around in the city together. And he dressed up his dog as a little Santa's helper. And that's just great business right there. Supposedly he always has his dog there, and usually the dog's dressed up as a cop, which I don't know how that works out in Colombia with like getting people to come in your taxi, especially if you have like drugs that can be sniffed out. But good for him, he's got the Christmas spirit, cute dogs, love it.
I don't think they have laws in Colombia, so I think
yeah, he's good.
I have a couple stories here. One I just want to touch on briefly. We kind of seem to live in the age of scalping and just marking up prices on stuff that you don't really need to, whether it's a PlayStation or a graphics card or something. Mark, this seems like it's up your alley. The headline on this from Kotaku is Rare Gokus possibly lost at sea after major shipping accident. So these are statues of Goku from Dragon Ball, in this case, Dragon Ball Super.
Mm-hmm.
These were not super expensive. They were $60 Ultra Instinct Goku figures. And obviously most of the stuff is shipped via transport. And they lost all of these shipping containers at sea in just a storm, basically. And they're talking about how thousands of these are now sitting on the bottom of the ocean, but some people already got them. So originally they were supposed to be convention exclusives, which everybody jumps on these, but you could pre-order them. And now there are people scalping them on eBay because that's what we do. So I'm wondering, some of my favorite stuff that I've been seeing on Reddit or Twitter lately is people saying, I'll take your PS5 at double the price, meet me here, and then just not going. And then they tell the people go in the gas station, I'm waiting for you. And then it's like, nope, fuck you. I'm wasting your time because you're being a dick.
And then they beat the shit out of you.
Well, you don't actually go to meet them, but sure. Mark, does your heart hurt for these Goku statues?
It hurts, but at the same time, for those people that actually got theirs, it's more exclusive now.
You'd be the guy.
Exclusive.
Yeah.
You know what? Here's the thing. Is this company going to produce more of these? That's what it comes down to. Because technically they had, if it's an edition size of 2,500 and 2,000 of them are at the bottom of the ocean and they're like, nah, this is all we're doing. I mean, we technically made them. They just happen to fucking hit the bottom of the ocean. We're not going to make any more. Then that's when you as a collector are like, yes.
It's like first edition printing of comic books versus a second printing. Like they're still going to be more valuable because there are fewer of them. But I digress. Joe, I'm going to give you a chance to throw out a best man alive if you have one. If not, I can keep rambling because that's what I do.
Yeah, and I don't know why I'm so fuzzy right now, so I'll try to fix that. There's the best man alive. There's a guy, I'm going to forget his name, but in West Philadelphia, he was born and raised. Actually, yes. Grew up. His mother was a immigrant, and she was deported when he was 4. That kind of grew up like not really having anything. Just organized a big clothing drive and food and all that stuff to give back to the community. And he was basically saying, like, if not us, who's going to do it? Which is great, but B, shitty for the city of Philadelphia that is like letting West Philadelphia crumble in some areas. But I lived there for a while when I worked at Drexel University, so it was kind of cool to see that. Yeah, nice, especially when you see a lot of shitty news on TV. It's nice to see those positives here and there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's always great when we have a guest on who actually takes this segment seriously. Like, this is
dogs into
did actual good, and meanwhile, I'm like, all these statues are at the bottom of the ocean. I do have one more though, and I was kind of rambling about this before we started. There is a writer by the name of Josh Weinstein on Twitter. He's written for a ton of animated shows, most notably The Simpsons, Futurama, Gravity Falls, etc. He started on The Simpsons in like 92, so it was the best years of The Simpsons in my opinion. But he basically started a Twitter thread asking people like, hey, is there a joke that you want to know the origin of, or that you never really understood? And he spent like 12 hours responding to people like, yes, this joke is, a reference to XYZ. Like, I'm looking at one right now that's Homer was running for like class president, or Bart was running for class president. Homer makes a sign for him. It says like sex at the top, and underneath it says, now that I've got your attention, vote for Bart, which is like a reference to tons of other stuff like viral marketing and shit like that. But it's just very interesting to me as someone who likes the nitty gritty of the writing on stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. If you want to go flip through that, his @ on Twitter is Josh Strange Hill. So check that out.
Have you always been a Simpsons guy?
Always. I often say that it was kind of formative for my sense of humor, like very dry and kind of stupid sometimes, just because I was always obsessed with it. My parents hated that I watched it, tried to get me to stop all the time. They just couldn't do it because it was on Fox all the time.
Yeah.
Come home from school at like 3:30 and 4:30 and 5 back-to-back Simpsons episodes.
I forgot about that.
So that's something that was very, it pushed my development in a certain direction, probably for the worse, but that's okay.
When I was younger, I remember that was on at like, I think 6 o'clock at one point, and Married with Children was on right after it. And my mother would be like, don't let him watch that. My dad's like, okay. So we were watching Simpsons and Married with Children back to back.
Yeah. Well, I can't get enough of it. I'm rewatching a lot of it now. People shit on the more recent seasons, but they're really not bad. Like, there are a few bad episodes and stuff, but there's still pop culture jokes and satire. It's still scathing as ever. So I'll try about
and subversive too. Like some of the jokes are really subversive.
People don't want to give it credit for paving the way for, Family Guy, South Park, but there are a lot of shows out there that are 20 seasons deep now that owe a lot to The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm. I think they would also, though, they would agree with that point, though. I think like the South Park guys would be like, yeah, of course.
The South Park guys have been most open about it. The Simpsons did it episodes and actually bringing Bart in. Yeah, they absolutely do that. So, all right. What everybody came for is our review.
Oh, God.
So we're going to get some of the nonsense out of the way up top. For example, the Rotten Tomatoes score, currently at 65% from critics, 74% from fans. Kind of lukewarm on this. Obviously, we'll get into this more deeply, and we are going to do a spoilers section. So I will alert everyone fully and throw a banner at the bottom that says, hey, we're spoiling Wonder Woman 1984. But let's get some other stuff out of the way first. So I mentioned the Patty Jenkins line talking about possibly directing a third. We don't know that's going to happen. She was kind of famously involved in a salary dispute when talking about this. She only made $1 million, for directing the first, which is, granted, when you're doing a $400 million movie, it's very low, extremely low. And if a more established male director had done it, he probably would have made 4 to 5 times that. So good for her for getting paid. I'm all for that. It's not even just an equality thing. It's like, hey, I put in my work. Fucking pay me now. So it remains to be seen whether people will enjoy this as much as they did the first one. But she's already signed on to do a Star Wars movie, so she's getting work from this, and good for her. This obviously is the return of Gal Gadot. I don't really know how you're supposed to say that, but I still love her. We got Chris Pine coming back, and we are also introduced to Kristen Wiig and Pedro Pascal as the, I guess, enemies in this movie. Kristen Wiig joins a long line of actors and actresses who have taken on this role of the nerd who gets bullied to no end or just doesn't fit in and then just becomes a supervillain. Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, Jamie Foxx as Electro, Jim Carrey as the Riddler.
Poison Ivy did it too.
Guy Pearce in Iron Man 3. Can we retire this trope?
Nope. Obviously not.
I just nerd gets bullied, gets powers I'm over it. I'm done with it. But I digress. So the point of this is we're 70 years later after the original. Chris Pine is dead, but maybe he's not. And we'll get into that. All of this stuff has been talked about in the trailers, but Joe, as our guest, I want to kick this to you first. If you could just give me your high-level thoughts on the movie, the execution, the acting, etc.
Yeah, so I think the acting was maybe the bright spot for me. Just in that, I mean, all the performances were fine. Pedro Pascal looked like he had a lot of fun, but the character was written really poorly, I think. If done well, Maxwell Lord could have been a major force in DC movies to, in the future. Kristen Wiig was fine too. I actually liked her in the role, but like you said, it's the same old thing we get, but she played it well. The movie itself is just dull. I was so bored watching it. It took forever to get to any sort of development of the plot, and I could have done without seeing it. If you skip over Wonder Woman 1984, you're not missing a thing because you don't learn anything new about Diana Prince.
Did we know that though? I mean, if we're talking about something that's set in the past 30 years, I don't know. I struggle with that one because I agree with you in terms of there not really being stakes. Like you're one of your protagonists is someone who already died, and you just kind of assume that he's going to go away again anyways. So I don't know. Did you expect that?
I did, only because like with you make a movie for a point, and like if you're especially with a character like that, any of the big superheroes, you want to see more of them, see a different side of them, see something that gives purpose to the whole reason you're watching the damn film. But everything that we got in this film was exactly what we got in Wonder Woman 19, the one that came out in 2017. It's the same exact trope. It's the love story. It focuses on that until it doesn't. And then even the intentions behind what Maxwell Lord is doing are stupid and not impactful at all.
I do think one lacked a lot of the action.
Oh, 100%.
Sorry, Mark. 1 second. It did flip a lot between Wonder Woman being super independent and strong, and then also completely leaning on Chris Pine as like, you're the only thing that I care about. So I had issues with that. I'm sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
No, I was just in comparison to the first Wonder Woman, this one lacked extremely the action. I mean, some of my favorite new DCU moments were actually in Wonder Woman, like No Man's Land, and when she's fucking running through the town during war and like gets to the sniper and fucking kicks his ass and shit like that. Some of the best action sequences I thought in some of the newer DC movies were from that first Wonder Woman. I thought this one, the writing was just outright lazy. I think it was too convenient. A lot of the things that happened in it, the villains, I think, Pedro Pascal could have been great. They ruined that. Kristen Wiig, I liked her as Cheetah until that we get the Cheetah reveal, and I think that's a spoiler. But if you don't know she's Cheetah already, sorry. And Cheetah is one of the oldest standing Wonder Woman villains, and you fucked that up. So I look at these from like a comic book lens, but I also look at it from just like loving movies, which I think is a good way to watch a movie like this, because I'm in a lot of comic book groups on Facebook, and the one argument is right now a lot of people actually like the movie. I feel like the movie viewers hate it because they're like, this is just shitty. This is bad writing. All that. But the comic book people, their defense is, oh, well, Wonder Woman is a peacemaker. But yeah, the first one, we get to see like that warrior side of her. But she's both of these things. that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, she's a peacemaker. She's trying to make the world better in this one, but it also was a super boring movie, and I thought it was just shit.
I fell asleep the first time I tried to watch it, so obviously I agree. I don't really get the whole peacemaker thing because she kind of Diana Prince, really waffles on that whole moral ambiguity thing, just like back and forth. She kind of uses it when it works best for her. This is a spoiler, so I won't completely ruin it, but I'll come back to it. I loved Pedro Pascal, and I love that as you get further in the movie, he becomes more and more disheveled, and mostly it starts with his hair.
His one eye too.
His one eye, just like he blows a blood vessel, and his ear starts bleeding at one point. I loved the job that Pedro Pascal did and the job that Kristen Wiig did. I love Kristen Wiig. I will watch her do anything, and she was very good as the neurotic weirdo. Even if I disagree with the way it was written, I can still appreciate the performance. Chris Pine is charismatic and handsome as ever, so there's not really much to say there.
I don't like him.
Really?
Not in this role. And maybe it's because it was a repeat again in my eyes with him, but I thought it was stupid. I love him in Star Trek. I love him in some other films, but he doesn't do it for me here. And like you said, they kept going back to this, like she was enthralled with him and not independent, and then she was independent, and then she wasn't. And it just didn't work for me. Like he was just an add-in that didn't have to be in the film.
And without spoiling it, I just hated his existence as like we'll get to it, but how he's existing in this movie, I just couldn't couldn't get my mind around the fact I'm thinking of all these things like, okay, if this is really happening, wouldn't it mean like this is happening and this is happening? And I don't know. It didn't do it for me in this one.
It doesn't pass the smell test. Granted, this is a superhero movie and we're supposed to completely suspend disbelief, but some of it's just like, at least be consistent.
Yeah.
It definitely could have used another rewrite or two, just maybe some quick edits. It definitely needed to be about an hour shorter because holy shit did it drag. Especially there are just scenes in the entire opening scene is you're back on Themyscira and they're doing this weird Olympic style game thing, and I'm just like, what the fuck is the point of this? You already know if you're watching Wonder Woman 2 that Wonder Woman is a badass. She's always been a badass. She will always be a badass. So just cut the shit. And
it's all about that gold suit reveal.
I don't want to sound like Brick because we're supposed to be without him this episode. Yes, Brick, I see you in the chat, but
I'm here.
Some of the jumping mechanics and the people on wires, it was so horribly. It just doesn't look even the slightest bit realistic. And I know I'm really picking nits here, but that was so dumb. But
1970s Superman is what it looked like.
Really, it did. Which
the flying scenes too were fucking horrendous. I couldn't deal with those either.
Okay, let's get anything else we got to say out of the way, and then we'll do our spoilers. So I'll kick that off and say it could have been. I had such high hopes for this, and maybe that's part of why I was let down. But it's too long. The writing is bad. It's disjointed, and it didn't make sense. I got to say, skip it. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, it was. It just did not do it for me. I'm gonna say skip it too. I really wanted to say save it. I'm like, would I tell somebody just to watch this later on? I wouldn't. I've only watched the first Wonder Woman twice. Like I did enjoy that movie a lot. But it wasn't one of those movies where I went back and watched it. And this is absolutely not going to be one of those movies. So I'm going to have to say skip it. Real quick, too, the composer was Hans Zimmer. Love Hans Zimmer, obviously. The Dark Knight, and he's been doing a lot of like Batman vs. Superman, a lot of the DC movies. I actually felt like his composing was kind of lazy. I think he was doing Dune. If I'm not mistaken, some of the music was actually, I feel like it was pulled right from Batman vs. Superman. Did they not use the same music in some of the moments?
They did.
Well, Wonder Woman has like a song, right? That he composed that he applies to whenever she's doing something badass.
Yeah, and they wanted to use that for some reason. I don't remember the full explanation, but
that didn't really make sense to me. But maybe it had a point to it. I don't know. Whatever. Skip it.
Joe, what are your final high level thoughts and rating?
the movie's pointless. It doesn't do anything to, you know, increase your knowledge or understanding of her. And it's definitely not one of the better DC movies. And it's a very low bar in some senses. So skip it.
This does kind of have me worried about Black Widow, because it's kind of the same premise where you're going back in time. So you know that there are no real stakes, or at least there are no stakes for a character that you already know. They can introduce someone new and give them stakes, but I don't know.
But we've gotten this with Captain America and obviously the last Wonder Woman and everything. So
that's true.
There's been success with these movies in the past.
And I trust Marvel to handle it well. I don't trust DC to handle it well all the time, even though I love DC, but I trust Marvel.
Okay. So at this point, we are going to talk about specific plot points that will potentially ruin the story for you if you haven't seen it. So here's your chance to mute us or skip to the end. Obviously, you can check the show notes for when we're done with this. I will throw this up on the screen. Spoilers for Wonder Woman 1984 from here on out. Brick's in the chat saying that Kristen Wiig had great running form, because that's the kind of thing that really makes a high-level box office success.
It was more like gliding form.
I think my gal is a much better runner than Kristen Wiig, but I do appreciate that Kristen Wiig clearly put in the work on this, you know, in terms of being moving from a weird character satire actor in Saturday Night Live to this is a huge jump, and I think that she handled it extremely well. Let's just talk about all the shit that we had problems with. And I think the top of mind one for me is the way that they brought Steve Trevor back here, where he essentially just replaces a dude. And I thought it was going to be, you know, like it's a descendant of Steve Trevor and it's his grandson or something, or I don't know, like his sister's kid. They just replaced this dude's life. And Wonder Woman is all about defending everybody, and she doesn't even bat an eye at the fact that this guy's entire existence has been wiped away.
What if he was like taking care of his grandma every day? Like, and now his grandma's fucking dead on the floor because
dead.
Selfish Wonder Woman.
Joe, your turn to air something out.
You're exactly right. I mean, I just kept thinking the entire time, like, what were they trying to do here with replacing this man with Chris Pine's character? And Wonder Woman's just like, cool, like whatever, that guy might be dead or that guy's gone. I'm fine with, you know, I have my guy back, so I'm okay. That annoyed me. And then the entire premise of just make a wish, I thought was so cheesy and stupid and you know, immature for a DC film. And I know they were trying to go a little lighter on this, obviously, and play with the 80s and all that, but it was just juvenile. Everything was so juvenile in this movie.
There was a funny comment online where it's like the only aspect to the writing of this movie that I actually enjoyed was at the very end when this guy, Steve Trevor, completely forgets about everything that happened in this movie, but yet he still gets to hook up with Wonder Woman. But he also doesn't remember that too, so that's kind of shitty. The fact he forgot about this whole movie.
The most unrealistic part is that she meets him at the end of this movie, and she basically tells him, like, you look excellent, and he didn't hit on her. I'm like, no, that's not, no. You're going to hit on Wonder Woman right there. So that didn't make any sense. But
yeah,
the wish thing. I'm okay with the premise. It could make sense if it was written better. But if you're going to eventually say monkey's paw out loud, it's just gonna evoke laziness. That is the laziest fucking writing. You could even say something along the lines of, yeah, some of these wishes could have unforeseen consequences, and then the viewer can just infer monkey's paw. That's like saying, oh yeah, that's a real Chekhov's gun. I saw a gun like an hour ago. Somebody's gonna get shot before the end of this. It's so fucking lazy.
I actually want to see the script because I want to see how many times Pedro Pascal says, "Do you wish it?" Because that was over and over again. Like, if you're exactly right, if they would have handled it better and had, you know, he was making these deals as a more nefarious villain, and he's like, "Yeah, I can help you get Steve Trevor back." Like, we'll do that. But instead, he's running around for 3/4 of the movie saying, like, do you wish it? Do you wish it? Do you wish it? It's so stupid.
I hated I hated the part at the very end. Talk about fucking cheap writing, just super convenient. Oh, the particles touch everyone. Great. Now you can literally take anyone's wish and make it happen. Yeah. How convenient. Stupid.
But if this dude, this disheveled dude with a popped blood vessel in his eye, comes on screen looking like a cheap televangelist, and I'm watching football or something, there's no way that I don't wish that this guy just drops dead on the spot so I can get back to watching the football game.
There you go. Solve the world's issues.
It definitely wasn't realistic.
No. And if we're going to talk not realistic, can we talk about how Steve Trevor just knows how to fly a fucking fighter jet?
Yeah.
His plane definitely has changed in the last 75 years, right? Yeah. But he doesn't know what fireworks are, even though fireworks have been around for fucking centuries. God.
I got this shit. Takes off in a jet.
It took him all of 3 seconds to figure out how to fly like a fucking F whatever fighter. I'm gonna shoot up. I'm too flustered.
No, you're exactly right with that. That was like just a stretch there. The other piece was we got more Lasso, of course, but like
I feel like Lasso. Too much Lasso.
Exactly right. 0 to 60 on that. Like everything was just like, what didn't we do a lot of in the last movie? Let's throw that in here, but then we're also going to use like, the premise of the love story as, the core of this film as well. So as I'm saying, they're doing new things here. They're also like replaying a lot of the old hits. But one of the other things that really drives me nuts is the reason Wonder Woman in 2017 was so well received was because they handled the character very well in making her relatable and making her, a strong, independent individual. In this, they just completely, I don't want to say retconned, but they completely went the opposite direction in just being goofy as shit. Like the whole mall scene was goofy as hell. And it could have been really cool, but I just was kind of rolling my eyes at it. The whole premise of like, I think they were poking fun at Trump. They were doing, a lot of just stupid shit that is not what you originally established Wonder Woman in the DCEU to be. So if you want to do something completely different, okay, but you have to have some serious hook somewhere to kind of bring it back to what you've established in the last one. And we never got that unless you count that monologue at the end when she's staring at him in the particles.
The thing about that first scene, I kind of liked the movie up until after the first 30 minutes. I thought the opening scene where she cheats as a kid, whatever, I'm like, okay, they'll take that moment and use it later on, which they kind of did. They didn't really, I guess. I don't really know. But the mall scene, I'm like, okay, this is what they're doing. They're doing this corny 1984 type thing, where everyone's dressed crazy, the style of the shots. But I accepted that, like, okay, this is what the movie's going to be. And they just like, I don't think the movie knew what it was trying to be. I thought it was,
I agree.
I just thought it was all over the place. And if they wanted it to be that silly 84, in the first 20 minutes, I would have been accepting of it and been like, okay, but nothing was consistent. The ending really pissed me off too, because I don't know. I thought her lasso was also really lazy writing. It could just do anything she wanted, and that was just lazy. She didn't even use it, for the lasso of truth to get somebody to tell the truth.
She lassoed lightning. And like what?
Very Thor.
Also,
her monologue at the end too. I'm like, okay, this needs to end. I don't need to hear this right now.
If this movie is set in 1984, she learns to fly and turn shit invisible, and she just forgets that in all the rest of the movies. Like Batman versus Superman comes and she doesn't know how to fly anymore. She can't just turn shit invisible. What?
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't even touch on that. She's just like, look what I can do. And that's the end of that.
Yeah, I tried this once before and now I'm a pro at it.
Right. Brick is bringing up the president. And that's another piece that really pissed me off. Again, it's a superhero movie and you need to suspend logic in a lot of ways. But like the fact that he just gets right in there to the Oval Office to talk to the president and the president's just like, okay, do whatever. It's just dumb. It was so stupid.
And
go ahead.
I was just going to say the very ending. Are we to think that everyone renounced their wish? Every single person in the world is that great of a person where they're like, oh, yeah, I wish for $100 million. I don't need it. Fuck it.
Not only that, everyone speaks English clearly.
Yeah, right.
The people in China are just like, oh yeah, I get this.
Just like gay. What?
That was one of her new skills. She didn't tell you about that, but she can.
Yes.
I was scrolling through Instagram and someone referred to it as like the Bruce Almighty complex. He turns into God. Yeah, that's accurate. Okay. Just this movie was boring. Have you guys talked to anyone who enjoyed it?
I'm just looking on like Facebook in these comic book groups, and there are like a good amount of people that are like, it was entertaining, it was a good story, and had good meaning behind it. I'm like, just shut up.
Yeah, there's people. Sorry, there's people that have said like it's the movie we needed this year. It gave me so much hope. I mentioned earlier that someone told me that I don't understand Wonder Woman if I don't understand what they were trying to do with this movie, and that's kind of weird. And someone else compared it to The Last Jedi with how split people are on it.
Okay. I don't really know what else to say to that, but I do think that there's some groups of people out there who don't take this stuff nearly as seriously as we do. Not just superhero movies, but movies in general. I was talking to my sister about it, and she fully enjoyed it. I don't want to say that you shouldn't be able to enjoy this. You should, but for me, obviously, I'm only speaking for me on this. It's not. Maybe it's not made for us. Maybe it was made for a broader, less critical audience. I'm not sure.
I don't know. What do you think of Kristen Wiig's cheetah at the end? That final fight scene.
You mean the entire thing where they go full DC and just put blue gels over everything and everything gets dark? It's so easy. It's like DC doesn't even read any of the comments on their fucking Instagram post. Like everybody's saying the same shit. You get to the end, everything turns dark. The villain is gray. It's the same fucking thing over and over again, and they can't fix it. Who is doing this to them?
I don't know. I thought she looked like I thought she looked like she was from Cats at first. When I saw her, I'm just like, oh shit. Like you see an up close look at her face. I'm like, oh no, I don't think this is gonna work right now.
I didn't think it was horrendous, honestly. Like, especially compared to Cats. Like I think it could have been much worse. But it looked like it wasn't finished. Or like they kind of just like got to one point and were like, all right, cool, we'll just set this at night and people won't see, the issues with it.
It's not even at night. It's just like everything's really dark blue and morose and so bad. And they both jump out of water and both of them are completely dry. That pisses me off more than
the same thing.
Like she gets out, Diana jumps out of the water and her hair is just like perfectly done. And stupid. I'm going to shut up about this because I feel like I've rambled enough.
Yeah, there wasn't enough action in this.
No, there wasn't at all. Joe, since you're our guest, I want to give you the floor completely, and I promise I won't interrupt you here. You got any other final thoughts or anything that really just was grinding your gears
for Wonder Woman?
Yeah.
Oh God. No, I mean the only other thing that really pissed me off is I get very tired of movies introducing something in the very first scene that like maybe we didn't know about before. So in this case, the golden suit thing and that whole history, and then her having to use it at the end here. Number one, I didn't think she should have used it. I mean, you can't take on Cheetah, which
you're not mobile at all.
Right. It's so stupid.
Not agile at all.
And it kind of was convenient the way they set that up. And I wasn't a fan of it. I mean, it looked cool. Don't get me wrong. I really liked it. And apparently Gal Gadot kept the helmet and stuff because it was inspiring, and they seemed like they had a great time making the film, but it just wasn't my favorite.
What about the fact that they sat on that armor for 1,000 years and she just immediately kind of breaks part of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like this is the first time that that's seen that type of, I don't know, damage.
I don't know how I feel about seeing the original Wonder Woman to the very end. I think it was cool. It was a cool nod. I don't know if they'll actually do anything with it. It was fine.
I was waiting for it because all of the I guess what the screenings that had happened weeks ago didn't have it, and they were like, "Oh, just wait, there is an after credit scene or a mid credit scene or da da da." And then when that was it, I was pissed off.
I thought it was bad. Sorry, Dreams. I know you're in the chat. You're saying you enjoyed the mid credit scene. The reason I thought it was bad is because I'm thinking about Marvel movies and how good they are at doing this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say, Lou Ferrigno in the Hulk, when he's walking with Stan Lee as the security guard, he's just there. And you're in the theater like, oh my God, that's Lou Ferrigno. Let's go. Like shit like that. At the end, when you have Linda Carter breaking this fourth wall, in my eyes, it was like, all right, what if in the last Batman movie, they just threw Adam West in at the very end and he goes, I've done this before. Like it's just so cheesy. And I'm like, come on. Like you could have done it way better.
Anti-clown spray or something to beat the Joker. That would be the best thing ever, actually, now that I think about it.
I just thought it was lazy again. Like you could have done it so much better. And I get it. It's a fan service. It's Linda Carter. It's super cool to see her back on the screen. The first Wonder Woman, I think, in live action. But it's been done way better. And they should have just taken, the success of how Marvel has done this in the past and made this moment a lot more meaningful, in my opinion. I don't know.
I truly did not expect to shit on this movie as much as we just did. But sometimes in talking and thinking back to it, you just kind of see something for what it's really worth. And my opinion maybe has soured even more so. But anything else before we wrap up our Wonder Woman talk? Speak now or forever hold your peace. I will never talk about this movie again because I've already done too much ranting.
What about the guy that's so convenient, the stoner guy that has the book and he just has all the background and just lays it on the table and then they're like, all right, peace, never see him again. All right, cool.
You gotta have a Deus Ex Machina in every movie and something comes in.
I forgot about him until you just said that.
Okay.
I forgot about a lot of this movie. Skip that shit. All right. I'm going to pull down our spoiler warning and we are going to talk about some of our recommendations. Quickly, I will say, I think we all watched Soul. We will probably do a full review on it next week. I'll just say it was really good in my opinion, but it also made me incredibly sad. And I will leave it at that.
Yeah. Same.
Joe, you are what I would call an actual film critic. Someone who actually knows about movies as opposed to us dumbasses. Have you seen anything a little off the radar lately?
Off the radar. So Promising Young Woman just came out in theaters on Christmas Day, which is a really solid movie. Not for everyone because it tackles sexual assault and it's like a revenge plot. Really interesting movie and really well done. So I definitely would recommend that. Trying to think of anything else. I've been into a lot of slower movies recently. What's that?
Like Wonder Woman?
Like Wonder Woman. Not into that slow movie. Let Them All Talk on HBO Max is really interesting just because of the way they made it. It's a Meryl Streep film. And Lucas Hedges is in it, but they filmed it on the Queen Mary 2. And apparently they just kind of gave them an outline, like here are the story points to hit. And it's a Soderbergh film. Here are the story points to hit. And they just kind of went off and said what they thought they should say in the moment. And they made a movie out of it. And you can totally tell. But I think knowing that makes you appreciate it that much more.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Mark, what do you got?
Oh, man. From entertainment perspective that I just watched, it's Soul. I saw Soul yesterday. I'm reading a lot of comics right now. King in Black. It's a Marvel book written by Donny Cates, illustrated by Ryan Stegman. They've been doing all the Venom stuff. Silver Surfer. They're just on a roll right now. And King in Black it doesn't introduce it. It mainly focuses on this villain Null that's been building up for the last year and a half. And it's really fucking good. So I would recommend going to read that. Department of Truth is an indie book that also came out, I think a few months ago. And it follows this guy who looks into the conspiracy theories and then this organization captures him and you find out maybe conspiracy theories aren't actually conspiracy theories type thing. It's super dark, super twisted. It's a good indie title if you're looking for that sort of thing, comic book wise.
Very cool.
Department of Truth.
I'm still playing Cyberpunk. I've got about 40 hours invested into it by now. I don't even know how far I am in the story because I basically pulled a full Witcher 3 and went and did side quests for probably 10 hours. My sleep schedule has suffered greatly because I've still got other shit I got to do. I'm still working on other things and doing a podcast, obviously. So probably spending too much time on that, but I enjoy the shit out of it. I had this as a possible news story, but a law firm is now filing a class action lawsuit against CDPR because they have an ADR, which if you're an investor, you know, is basically it's a Polish company, and they're not traded necessarily the same way that American stocks are, but you can still invest in them. Anyways, a bunch of people are getting together to sue CDPR, saying that they were misled, which I think is the dumbest shit of all time because it's still a game that still sold a shitload of copies. I digress. We live in the most litigious society of all time, and I fucking hate it.
Video game wise, my PS5 came 3 weeks early,
Nice.
and I've been playing a Miles Morales game, which is pretty solid. That's a fun game.
I loved it. I had issues with the ending battle. Obviously, I won't spoil it, but I'm excited to see what you have to say.
Yeah,
it is a little shorter than I wish it would be, but that's okay. It is not a full price game, but at this point, Joe, I'll ask you once again to plug your show. Anything else that people can find you doing?
Yeah, GuyAtTheMovies.com is the source for daily news and reviews, as well as Guy at the Movies on Instagram, Guy at the Movies 1 on Twitter. You can also find us every week on any of your podcast platforms. The Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean. It's our weekly kind of recap news show and shooting the shit and all kinds of stuff. As well as on Friday, I'll be dropping the first episode of Never Coming Soon, a new podcast about films that were in development but never quite made it.
Very exciting. I think I might have to dig through the archives and make a couple recommendations for
Definitely
people.
do.
All right. So thanks for tuning in. This has been episode 227 of the Chumpcast. As always, you can find us on all social media platforms at the Chumpcast. You can call or text us at 847-920-6107. And until next time.
Chumps out, motherfuckers. Peace.